All right. Really, really excited to chat today with Garrett. Garrett is actually our go-to-market advisor at Rise. He's been immensely helpful, but he is also he runs his own agency and is really connected in the agency space and knows a lot about what's changing and what's happening. So yeah, I'll let you introduce yourself, Garrett, and then we can get into some questions.
Sounds good. Well, thanks, Miguel. Appreciate you having me on just to join and chat. So my background is mostly working with early stage B2B software startups. So I was a CMO, founding marketer for, over a decade and have been consulting full time for about almost 3.5 years. So what's really interesting is because my background is mostly in software, I thought I'd be mostly working with software companies. And well, that's true. I'm working with Rise and, others.
Hmm.
But about half my clients today have ended up being agencies. So I also do a lot of work with early stage agencies that are around the 1 to 2 million in revenue range. And the problems I help with are really similar across both software and agencies. And it's really about building your marketing and sales foundations. And so, kind of core to my belief is that in order to do marketing and sales really well, you have to have a couple of core foundations locked in, which is really tight understanding on which audience you want to go after, have a really tight offer, right? That's packaged in a way that really communicates your value and every price is part of that, right?
Hmm.
Strong messaging to be able to communicate what you do, and then clarity on which channels you should focus on and why. So, anyways, that's the stuff that I help both software and agencies with. So, been doing it full time for about 3.5 years, like I said, and it's been a really fun journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, obviously really resonates with a lot of the ways that you've helped us this past year. I guess, for this topic, we wanted to focus on AI and how it's changing things in the agency space. I would be curious, you mentioned that's, just to start off, that's, what you're helping primarily agencies and companies with. Have you seen any of that change? Any of those
Yeah.
kind of core? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
with
there's
AI.
there's so many ways. I mean, we could go so many directions with this today,
Yeah,
Miguel. But
yeah,
a couple of things that I've thought of recently with regards to how AI has impacted or affected agencies. One is the old agency model, I think, is starting to die, right? Meaning
yeah,
the old agency model was hire more bodies to get more capacity and sell that capacity, make sure you have good margins, right? That's kind of how the classic SEO, paid ad, like all the different agencies were operating. And AI has made agencies more efficient with their time. They can
hmm,
get more done, but it's also lowered the barrier a little bit for execution only
yeah,
agencies, right? Because their clients now can get AI to do a lot of the 80% of the way execution, right? So
yeah,
it's kind of a race to the bottom if you're an execution only agency that focuses on growing by hiring people and increasing capacity, right? And
yeah,
so like I think what's really interesting about that is there's a couple of things that means that's going to be different I think for successful agencies going forward. One is you have to be a strategic partner, right? You can't just be an execution arm. The second is you can't just scale through hiring more bodies and throwing it at the problem. You have to think about the tech, including AI, that you can use. You have
hmm,
to think about what's unique about my process that helps me stand out from other competitors, right? There's different ways that you can tailor your differentiation and build it into your actual business, right? So, anyways, I'll stop there. Like, there's so much more we could talk about this, but like, those
yeah.
are a couple of things that have been top of mind for me with regards to AI and agencies.
That's really interesting. Yeah. How, I mean, how are some of the ways that you've seen agencies make that shift from being more execution to being more strategic? What are some ways that you can approach that?
Well, I think to kind of add on to, in addition to just the agency lens, like we're seeing a huge boom, like myself included, with fractionals, consultants, people going out on
Yeah.
their own, right? And so
Yep.
they might not always have a huge team, but you're definitely competing against fractionals. So I call it the micro agencies sometimes. There's a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
micro agencies out there that a couple of small, a small operations team, a strategic founder, and a lot of AI, right? and honestly, those types of agencies, those micro agencies, are competing heavily with the heavier people backed agencies today, and they have better margins, right? And so
Yeah.
they're more sustainable. So um, I don't know. It's pretty interesting seeing how it all evolves. But like the fractional play has definitely influenced and impacted the agency world too, since we're seeing so many more fractionals and consultants and people going solo.
Do you think that is that will that trend continue? Is like, do you think that the age of the bigger agencies is dying away and that the future is more of this like fractional, I mean, across the board, more agency based work or freelance consulting work, amongst companies as a whole?
I think so. I also think that the day of the um, full service agency is rapidly dying, right? Where you
Mm,
just hire one agency that does everything okay, and that's sufficient. I think larger companies that are slower to adopt new trends in technology will continue hiring full service agencies for a while. But
yeah,
especially smaller mid market companies, it makes no sense to hire a full service when you can hire a bunch of specialists that are expert at what they do, right?
yeah,
And so I
yep,
think that is the trend that I'm seeing most too, where it's about, if you want to stand out in the agency world today, you do have to find, for lack of a better term, your niche, right? Like you
yeah,
have to find where you are an expert, where you want to specialize, and go all in on that. It doesn't mean having to
yeah,
focus on a specific industry. Usually, the
yeah,
best
yeah.
way to niche is by the problem that you solve.
Hmm.
But I definitely don't see that going away anytime soon.
That makes sense. Are there other what are some other, I'd say, or even just one other area that you think is here to stay, like a core value that you don't think AI is going to make any changes to in the agency world?
Um, so, what's really interesting about AI is, you know, a lot of people are nervous about AI taking away our jobs, right? Like
Hmm.
it's going to replace people, agencies, especially knowledge workers. Um, I don't see that happening anytime soon, right? There's some
Hmm.
of that that's going to happen at the lower end of kind of like execution based, like
Yeah.
that's what it's good at. But I think anyone who has used AI knows that any good AI output is about a couple of things. It's about the quality of the inputs that you put into
Hmm.
it, it's about the right prompt or guidance or template. And then it's about having the expertise to be able to see the output that it spits out and
Hmm.
know, is this actually good quality or not? So I think there's always going to be, for the foreseeable future, at least in my
Yeah.
mind, there's going to be room for deep expertise and the
Yeah.
right inputs used in conjunction with AI, right? Like we've all seen people who aren't copywriters think that they produce something great with
Yeah.
AI because they're not the expert to judge, is this good or is this bad? And
Totally.
it was horrible, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's the same thing no matter how you're using AI, is we
Yeah.
need that expertise, and we need people that will help us create the right context for AI to help with some of the execution. And so if you're focusing on, again, being that strategic partner as an agency founder and helping with those two ends of the spectrum with AI, I think you're going to be okay for the next while.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. I think it's um it's changing things the way that we work, but it's not it won't replace all of our jobs. I'm not quite like a doomer on that extent. We'll
We
see
still
though.
need people and experts, right?
Yeah,
We need the human in
exactly.
the loop.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Um, I would say, to that end, actually, that, from what you're seeing in the agency world, is there an area where agencies are overestimating AI on what it can do or how it can impact them?
I saw someone, a friend of mine, post on LinkedIn the other day, and it was a little bit of a comedic, funny post, right? But
Yeah.
he said it was kind of like he posted something to the effect of, we have replaced so much of our execution with AI. We've, cut our time to produce things in half. And at the end, the kind of punchline was, it's only taken 150% of the time that it used to, right? To
Yeah, yeah,
run all of the AI today, right?
yep,
And so, like, I think that there is some truth to that, though. And that's why it's funny. We're still figuring out the right way to use AI efficiently. But
yeah,
I, what I have seen is you have to find the right balance, right? If you try to go all in on AI everything today, and we're going to
yeah,
replace all of our human proven processes with AI,
yeah,
I actually think that it's pretty nimble and it breaks. You have to
yeah,
find strategic places to start to introduce AI without blowing everything up,
yeah,
because when you try to go all in, it ends up taking 150% of the time that it used to just manage it, right? And
totally.
so that's maybe one of the failures that I've seen. You have to have a healthy skepticism, and you have to approach it strategically. And how can I start to integrate this more and have your
Yeah,
pulse on it, but not just completely change your model tomorrow and blow
yeah,
everything up just because AI is here.
that makes sense. What, I guess, to that extent, like, what are some ways that you've seen agencies approach that well, and even some specifics, or personally, areas where you've approached integrating an AI into a process and it's gone well? What did that look like, and what were those processes?
So I think one of the things that you just said is actually a really important key. You can't really integrate AI unless you have an established process for how things have been done that's been proven, right? So for
Yeah.
any type of work that you're doing, as an agency, if you're doing completely custom work every time, and this goes back to like what we were talking about before, specialists over
Mm,
generalists, right? If you're doing completely custom work every time and you're reinventing on the fly and you don't have any sort of standardization in the type of work that you're doing, it's going to be really difficult to implement AI successfully in your business, right? It has
yeah.
to start with some sort of standardization. I have a proven process that I work through. And now, how can I start to use AI to help speed up and make that process more efficient, right? So there's lots of examples of that I've seen. Like for me, I have I've started building out a lot in Claude Code, as everyone
Yeah.
has the last couple of weeks, and kind of some of my own agents built on my processes and my context. And what's great about that is, like I have processes I go through when I'm doing, website messaging and positioning. And now, because I have AI agents that are trained on parts of that, I can give the right input, which is
Yeah.
usually like customer interview data or sales call data, right? And it knows my framework, and it can spit out something that's 80% of the way there, and I can refine
Yeah.
it, and it speeds up my process, right? So I've seen a lot of agencies doing something similar. It really comes down to your process, but it comes down to, do you have a process? Do you have any sort of standardization? And that's where you can start to implement AI.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we found internally at Rise that was something that we were thinking a lot about. It was like, because you default to your existing processes too. So we had to multiple times, and we still do, reflect like every couple of weeks, like, hey, how can we implement AI more? Where do we feel like time is being um, wasted or caught up, or where can we be more efficient? Because you can get into flows too. Like, that's just how I do things. That's always
Yeah.
been the way it is too.
Totally. And I think
And
it's an interesting balance that everyone has to take, because you have to spend
yeah,
some time just kind of learning what's new and what's out there. And,
yep,
but you don't want to also spend too much time or
yeah,
go too far in that direction where you blow everything up and it breaks next week. Right. So
yep.
it's an interesting balance that I think we're all still trying to figure out.
It reminds me, I mean, as a developer, I mean, I think automation has been around for a while, and I've definitely been the past year, like, it's just been around for a while, where you've spent so much time automating something. You're like, oh, I always, post this change log. Maybe I can automate this, and you end up investing like 20 hours into automating it, and you're like, well, I probably would have spent 20 hours in the next 3 years just manually posting this change log. So it's always like a balance there,
Yeah.
for sure.
Got to do it manual first, prove out the
Yeah,
process. Then you do.
exactly. Yep. Speaking of, what's one thing that agencies are still doing manual that will feel completely insane in 12 months, in your opinion?
Um, that's a good question. Um, I'm not going to answer your question directly. I'll kind of come
Okay.
back around to this, but what's interesting is this is the thought that came to my mind as you asked that question. I recently went to like a Claude code kind of class, like how do you get your own quote unquote chief of staff set up for your own
Yeah.
business, right? So like an core agent that knows your business and context, has access to, your calendars, your emails, knows who your clients are, all of that type of stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things that this like instructor was talking about that I think was really interesting is he said that he thinks it's going to be crazy that if if everyone in 5 years doesn't have their own AI chief of staff that has all the context on their business, that has their unique models built into it, that has
Yeah.
access to their connections and everything else. And where I think it gets really powerful is because everyone has their own expertise and connections and everything else. And when they start to codify that into like their own chief of staff like agent, and then you give your chief of staff agent the ability to interface and talk with other experts agents
Yeah.
out there, right? Like I know McGill is an expert on certain things that I'm not. If my
Yeah.
agent can tap into that unique expertise that your agent has, wow, like you imagine the type of future that we can have
That's
with
just
that and how
amazing.
stuff can speed up. Like that's where it becomes really powerful. So I don't know. When you ask that question, that's like where my mind went is like a couple weeks ago, having that type of conversation with this person is like, this could change work drastically over the next 3 to 5 years, right?
Most definitely. Yeah. That's very exciting. Um, yeah, super cool. Yeah, can't wait for that. All right. In terms of, we're kind of related to that. So roles at agencies, like how do you kind of see the structure of agencies changing now with the introduction of AI, with things like everyone having chief of staff,
Yeah, we kind of
AI
talked
chief of
about this a
staff.
little bit earlier, but I've seen that
Yeah.
definitely this rise of like the micro agency,
Yeah.
right? Where, in the past, one of my first jobs when I was still in college was working at like a small SEO agency. And I was one of the many students that these founders hired for cheap labor, again, pre-AI
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
ago, right? To, crank out low SEO title tags and meta descriptions and all of this stuff for clients, right? And you think about that model and it's just outdated today, right? But there
Hmm.
still are a lot of agencies that are operating in that world. And so I think that's one of the major changes we're going to see is it's
Yeah.
just not as efficient. You can't get the right margins. It's way
Yeah.
better to have a small micro team of an expert founder who leads a
Yeah.
lot of it and a small operations team of experts and then AI agents that help fill in the gaps on a lot of the execution. And I'm seeing that over and over with clients that I work with, friends of mine who own agencies. I have another friend who has a LinkedIn paid ads agency, and his whole model is I'm only hiring experts with certain amount of experience, and we all work with clients, and they use AI and they help integrate it, but it's none of the classic agency is you talk to this expert and
Yeah.
they sell you and then you get passed off to this junior person who's still in college to kind of help execute. And I think
Yeah.
that's the model that's dying.
Yeah. That makes sense. Um, I guess actually, and related to that is what what parts of agency work do you think won't be automated away, or what you're still going to need the human there? Like where are those areas of the agency that yeah you'll still need the human or the more human interaction?
Yeah, what's interesting about that is I actually a lot of times I like to think about like almost the opposite of that, like what parts are actually going to be removed. And I think the
Yeah.
challenge for a lot of people who are just starting their careers and want to work in the agency world is it's a lot of those lower entry level jobs. It's a lot of
Yeah.
the quote unquote grunt work, the execution that you kind of have to pay your dues. That's the stuff that's being replaced by AI. So,
Yeah.
what's interesting about that is I think the strategic side of it, knowing how to use AI or knowing what the good output looks like on the back end, is where I don't think that's going to be replaced. Let me give you a quick example. I have another client that I worked with, VP of marketing in a small company. He's a friend of mine, so I was kind of advising him and helping him with some stuff. And he hired a kid right out of school he's still in college, I think, but he's coming on full time shortly. And the kid had no SEO background or knowledge, but he was just like a go getter, and he
Yeah.
was great with AI. And so this VP of marketing said, "I want you to go learn, use AI, and go learn how to do SEO and AEO, get us to rank better, in ChatGPT and Claude, as well as like our site, other places." So this kid, because he was pretty savvy with AI, went and figured it out. And
Yeah.
within a couple of months had made drastic improvements using AI to help him implement.
It's
That's the type
crazy.
of stuff where I think,
Yeah.
you can have a big impact going forward. You're not just like I was, the person writing
Yeah.
title and meta tags or whatever, right? It's if you can really learn how to leverage how to use AI, or you have the deep expertise of experience to know what good output looks like, that's the stuff that's not going to get replaced.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's funny because it's like those lower roles are being removed, but at the same time, for those less experienced people, you can get the experience to start operating at the level of those higher roles, so quickly. But I think you have to have that internal. It's more on you. It's like you need that internal motivation. It's a good time to have like high agency, probably. Um, okay, so these next are kind of about time, of course, and productivity. So I guess, and billing. So like, how do you think agencies should be thinking about time tracking in an AI world?
Yeah. Well, I think it's still vital. It's still important, right? And it goes back to some of those key pieces about profitability, right? And so you want to know, you want to have visibility on where you are spending your time and where your employees are spending your time. Even, in the future where your agents are spending your time across which
Yeah,
clients, right? That's what's going to give you visibility, is the thing that I think as a founder, business owner, is one of the things that's most important. If you can have realistic visibility on how your business is actually operating, where time is being spent, where the bottlenecks are, that's one of the biggest challenges, is not having that data, right? As an
yeah,
owner, because you need to spend a good amount of your time removing those bottlenecks and optimizing and making sure that things are operating efficiently. So I think it's still a crucial piece going forward, that help you understand margins, profitability, all of that stuff.
yeah, and yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, if there's a time tracker that you want to recommend, feel free.
I
Uh,
know. Yeah, I wish I knew of one,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you know, no, Rise, I think is like the
yeah.
one out there that I have seen that is on the cusp of doing this the right way with the changing model and world. And really, I have tried and used multiple time trackers in the past. The thing that's awesome about Rise is, you know, people first come in and are like, wow, this is amazing. I can just do this automatically. I don't have to have that little, start working on this client, stop the clock in the corner of my screen, right?
Yeah.
But then you start understanding all the layers deeper that it goes, and it's really powerful, really impactful. So highly recommend it.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Um, uh, okay. In terms of, you know, utilization, how are you thinking, or agencies thinking about that? Because time has always been time tracking has been used so much for workload and utilization, and AI is changing that. How are you thinking about that? How do you think it's going to change, for your own agency and for the ones you work with?
Yeah. So what's really interesting about this is, like we talked about this a little bit before, but the old model is just hire bodies and throw them at the work, mark up that work. And so I make a little bit of money on that. And that's really the only leverage lever that agency owners traditionally have pulled, right? There's actually a lot more leverage levers that they
Yeah.
can pull, right? Even down to, as you niche, as you focus, your expertise in that space is helps you generate more income. There's lots of ways to do this. AI obviously is in its form, lots of different ways, is a leverage lever, right? In terms of
Yeah.
execution. So the idea at the end of the day is, how do we make the most money in the least amount of time without trading time for money directly, right? Which is kind of the old model, right? And so you still want that visibility and you still want to be able to track where the time is being spent, whether it's you or whether it's the
Hmm.
agents that you've built internally, right? You want that
Yeah.
visibility so you can know, am I making good margins on this? Am I
Yeah.
actually profitable? It's
Yeah.
it's similar to the past, but it's just a different way of thinking about it. In the past,
Yeah.
again, it was just all about bodies, right?
Yeah.
Now it's about agents and other forms of leverage, but you
Yeah.
still need to be able to track time that they're
Yep.
spending to make sure that you're profitable, right?
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, to that point, how do you think agent AI is going to change margins for agencies?
The ones that figure it out, I think AI is going to help them drastically improve margins, obviously,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
ones who don't and are stuck in that old world of hiring and throwing bodies at the problem, I think they're going to see their margin shrink.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before too, where is if you're just an execution agency and that's being quickly replaced by
Yeah.
AI,
Yeah.
right? And so you're going to see those. That's a race to the bottom where it's going to be. You're going to have to lower your price over time. Your margins are going to shrink. So again, you want to be the expert that is
Yeah.
helping again with some of the execution, but you have to have that expert lens in the work that you do.
That makes sense. And in terms of margin, like, do you see, I think we've seen in the past 10, 15 years, billable hours has sort of been more or less replaced with retainers. Do you see billing changing? Do you see retainers? What do you see changing with AI on the actual billing front to get those margins?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
going to be really interested to see how it all evolves, but I definitely think that there are opportunities where we're going to see it change
Yeah.
a lot. We've already started seeing changes where more agencies as well as software are outcome focused, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just you're paying per seat or you're not just paying per hour, right? It's
Yep.
really about you pay per outcome. And AI is one of the things that is starting to change that, right? It's
Yeah.
less about the execution and paying for that because the cost of execution is going down with AI.
Yeah.
It's more about can you help me actually achieve this result, right? And so that'll be really interesting to monitor how agencies can change, potentially their their entire model and cost
Yeah.
structure, right? With good execution, that's a lot of AI, but still getting paid really well by helping hit certain milestones and outcomes, right? I don't know, but that's kind of like where my
Yeah.
head's at is like I'm interested to see how this continues to evolve.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah, I am too. I think everybody, the jury's out still. Um, okay, so I have a couple. I've got a couple like short kind of like clip, optimized questions for you. Hot takes, I guess we should call them. That's what we call them with Tesla. Fill in the blank with these hot takes. The first one is AI is going to kill blank inside agencies.
AI is going to fill time wasting inside of agencies, right? So if you have visibility
Yep.
into where time is being wasted with tools like Rise, right, you
Yeah.
can eliminate that. It also, there's a lot of time wasting that and fluff that goes on that you can just eliminate when AI starts helping with the execution.
Awesome. Okay, the biggest mistake agencies are making with AI is blank.
I think it's on two of the extremes. So the biggest mistake that agencies are making with AI is they're either ignoring it and not doing
Hmm.
anything with it, or they're going all in and trying to redesign their business and fire everyone just based on, let's run this with AI. I think it's finding the middle ground, like we talked about earlier, is the key today.
Makes sense. In 2 years, agencies that don't do this will struggle.
I mean, based on what we talked about
Yeah.
today, I think in 2 years, agencies that don't use AI are going to struggle drastically. Um, there are other things about that too. I think we talked about today. In a couple of years, I think the agencies that try to one use the just hire people and mark up and have margins on top of that as their main point
Yeah.
of leverage, I think that's going to hurt them. I also think that um, agencies that don't focus and become specialists are going to struggle.
Yeah.
Like we talked about earlier, the days of the full service agency are dying rapidly.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's all the questions I have. Is there anything else you want to add? Any last words for the recording?
This has been awesome. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
Go check
Oh
out
man.
Rise if you don't know what it is.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. And also check out Garrett. He has been so immensely helpful for us. And can't recommend working with you more highly as well.
Thanks, Miguel. Appreciate it.
Right. Let me just click stop.